Hi guys, welcome to another Road Pilgrim car review, and today we have the Maxus MIFA 9 electric MPV on review with us today. And we are particularly excited about this review, or at least I am particularly excited about this review, because this is actually the very first fully electric 7-seater full-size luxury MPV that we are getting in Singapore. So we definitely are very keen to see how it performs on the roads here in Singapore. And for today's review, we are going to go check out its exterior, and obviously we're going to go jump around its cabin because it's an MPV. And then also we're going to go take it for a drive and see how its electric drivetrain holds up in Singapore's environment compared to its petrol-powered cousins, so to speak. But before we get on with the review, if you are thinking about selling your car in Singapore, be sure to check out the link in the description box below, because through that link, we will be able to provide you the best possible quote and valuation for your used car. Or we can also help you to consign it on the open market for a better price. And it is completely free to inquire. There are no transaction fees, no hidden fees, so be sure to check out the link. And with that, let's go check out the car. Alright, so jumping into the review, this is the exterior of the Maxus MIFA 9. As you can tell, this is a rather bold looking MPV, which I like very much, because I think a lot of MPVs in the market today, or in the past, they have always been quite styled in a rather utilitarian way, and I think the makers don't really, maybe they don't accord the MPV that much of a styling consideration. But here with the Maxus MIFA 9, you can clearly tell there has been some effort, particularly from the front here. It looks extra modern, those very sleek headlights, which I like very much, and then it's got this very bold front fascia. I'll show it to you from the side profile. Very modern looking, and of course, being an MPV, that's a luxury MPV, it's got some nice chrome bits all around the car. For reference, and I think the reference for a full-size luxury MPV in the market is probably the Alphard or the Vellfire, and the Maxus MIFA 9 is actually longer, broader, but not as tall as the Alphard and Vellfire, which essentially, in Singapore's context, that means that you should be able to fit into most car parks more easily than with the Alphard and Vellfire. But do take note though, because this Maxus MIFA 9 is still about 1.84 meters tall, which means that there are still a small number of car parks in Singapore where you will not be able to enter, because there are some car parks, like for example Quilted Shopping Centre, that has a height limit of 1.8 meters, so technically this car will not pass through as well. But that being said, most HDB car parks will have no problem with this, and I think at 1.84 meters, generally speaking, you should be able to enter most car parks. So this is the exterior, and let me just show you the boot. So currently, the seats are in 7-seater configuration, so all the seats are up. And here you have actually still quite a decent amount of space, because you will be able to put a few like cabin-sized luggage bags upright in this area, which means that for road trips up to Malaysia, or for slightly longer road trips, you should be able to have enough luggage or you should have enough space to carry all your luggage. And obviously, if you fall down the seats, then you've got even more space. But let me just see how easy it is to do it. So you pull and then you push. So yeah, there you go. However, as you can see, the seats do not fold down completely flat. So you do have this rather large, rich, I'm not exactly sure if I'm doing this wrong, but I don't think so. This should be the correct way. That being said, operation is actually very easy. This seat can't actually fully go down, because the second row seat is actually reclined quite a little bit. But in any case, the one-handed operation on this makes it actually rather easy. So not too bad. And of course, being a rather large car, you have to have your automatic tailgate. There you go. And let me just show you the sliding doors. So this is on the driver's side, and of course these are automatic. You do have automatic sliding doors on both sides, as a luxury MPV should have. And here you go. This is your seating configuration. Very nice. And I'll jump into the cabin in a bit to show you how it feels. But first, we are going to start with the front side of the cabin and check out what that looks like. Okay, so this is the cabin of the Maxus MIFA 9, and generally speaking, this is made to be somewhat of a luxury MPV. So there has been quite a lot of effort made to the styling of the cabin, and I think the first indicator that you kind of realize that this is a luxury MPV is of course through the seats, because these look quite pretty and they have this nice quilted pattern. So all that is very cool, and of course they've got a whole host of luxury features in the car as well that make your life very livable and let you know that this isn't just another utilitarian MPV. So first and foremost, if you look at the center console here, you've got a nice wireless charging pad here. Got a nice center bin for storage, 2 cup holders, another additional space here to put some sort of device because it's actually grippy at the bottom. You've got even more storage space at the bottom here with some dividers as well. You've got a 5-volt USB socket, and of course you've got a standard, is it USB-C? No, these are just standard USB sockets. And then of course you've got your touchscreen infotainment unit right here, which is not the best unit on the market, but to be honest, we don't really have a reference point of how this infotainment unit has progressed over the years, because we haven't actually seen an earlier version of this car. And for some of you who might remember the Maxus brand from its commercial vehicles from some years ago, you'll realize that obviously this is the first ever fully passenger platform that Maxus is releasing in Singapore. So truth be told, we don't really have a reference point about how the cars have evolved in terms of passenger class. But nonetheless, this is a nicely sized screen, quite appropriate for the car. And through this infotainment unit, you control quite a number of functions, including actually some fairly interesting stuff. Like for example, if you want to adjust or put down your front windows, you can actually click here. And obviously you can control it through your regular buttons as well. But there is one interesting feature through the screen, which is that if you drag your finger on the diagram here of the window, you can actually drag it to a specific spot and your window actually follows you. So if you look here, I can drag it just a little bit, and then if I drag it to a specific point and a little bit more, a little bit more. And this is actually really easy to use and control. I'm not entirely sure why you would need a function like that, or why such minute adjustments in your window are important, but it's kind of nice to have. It all kind of completes the package of how a luxury MPV feels, because then you've got these additional controls, and you know, worst case scenario, this becomes a party piece that you can show your friends. And of course, I think the main part that is cool is of course that you can control your sunroof and both your front and rear sunroof openings from this screen as well. Aside from that, you can actually even activate your auto hold and your handbrake release from this infotainment unit, which of course is not entirely necessary, but it's still quite interesting to have. And I feel that this screen is not exactly matte finished, but it is a little bit more fingerprint resistant than the average infotainment unit that you find on the market, which I think is quite nice probably, because seeing that this car is rather reliant on the infotainment unit, it's probably a good idea that this is not so fingerprint or doesn't attract so many fingerprints. Aside from that, the infotainment unit also houses all your driving preferences. So of course, you go to system settings, you can change your driving mode, standard, eco and sport. You can change the steering weight of your steering. You can also change your regenerative braking amounts, which I'll get to a little bit more when we put the car on the road and we drive it, because there are certain things we want to share about that. and of course all your safety systems. And being quite a large car, there are actually quite a lot of safety systems in this car. Maybe a tiny bit too many if you ask me, but I think the average driver who may have a little bit of anxiety about driving a car this size will probably appreciate some of these safety features. So you've got collision assist, you've got lane assist, you've got intelligent speed limit assistance, blind spot assist, front radar parking assist, speeding warning, and of course you have this very nice function where the car actually monitors driver's condition through this little piece, this piece of equipment here. I don't actually know how they monitor the driver's condition, but I think they probably look at whether your eyes are closed or not, whether if you start shutting your eyes then the system will beep. So that's generally what you can find in the infotainment unit. And I'm actually particularly glad that they have taken the aircon controls out and placed it on its own dedicated control panel. So through here you can control your temperature, which, you know what, I'm gonna bring it down to 80 because it's super hot outside, and your fan speed as well. And once you tap these buttons, automatically other sub-menus come out, like for example your recyclable air, your vent, which vents are the aircon blowing out of. All these things come out after you tap on it. And then you can also quite easily tap on home to bring it back into the main home page. So that's the infotainment unit. Right in front of the driver, you've got a fully digital driver's display, which is a pretty standard looking one. The bezels are quite thick on this one. Reminds me a little bit about the old, reminds me of the old Mercedes-Benz infotainment units. The size of this driver's display is actually, I would say, small in comparison to the rest of the car, and it's sort of in a weird space as well because it's mounted on the dash, but it's designed to kind of fit within this, or to be visible through this part of the steering wheel. So depending on how your adjustments are for your steering wheel, you actually might get obscured. So I think in this car you'll really need to kind of find a sweet spot for this and figure it out. But nonetheless, information from the instrument cluster is actually fairly basic but clear. So everything is very clearly stated there, and all your crucial bits of information are there. For example, your speed, your range, your regen braking, what drive mode you are in. So park, reverse, neutral drive. You've got your power, how much power you're actually putting on at that current instantaneous moment. And of course you got your time, your mileage, so on and so forth. And these things are generally, let me see. So I'm trying to find the adjustments for this, but I'm not seeing a lot of adjustment. Alright, so you can adjust some of the displays, through your multi-function steering wheel, which is a nice little open design, reminiscent of the S-Class steering wheel, I feel, but obviously not as luxurious. But generally, I would say, overall, the cabin of the Maxus actually feels pretty well put together. And although material use isn't super premium, but I would say that build quality, especially of Chinese-made automobiles, have come such a long way. I think the Maxus MIFA 9 is a very, very good testament of that, because nothing feels rickety, everything feels quite tight, feels quite well put together, and even on the drive as well, the entire chassis does feel quite stiff and quite, it's not floppy like it used to be. It's all quite nicely tuned, and I think it's actually a very nice place to be. But obviously, as you all know, the driver's seat in the MPV is just the, we're just the driver, because the real kings of the car sit in the back. So let's go check out the rear, or the main compartment of the MPV. Alright, so this is the business end of the MPV, the Maxus MIFA 9, and to get things started, you close your doors through a button here. You don't have to actually reach back and pull the lever. So There we go. I was pressing the wrong one. So of course this is all automatic, and as you can see, the nice quilted stitching pattern extends to the back cabin as well. And I mean, I'm not even going to say it's spacious because obviously it is. But let me tell you about other things you can find in the rear part of the car. So for starters, there is a leg rest over here, which is very nice and luxurious. And of course, I'm seated in a captain style seat, and I've got two armrests that I can pull down, and this is actually super comfortable, right? There is a dedicated aircon over here, which you can adjust through this panel up here. So that's pretty cool. Let me just bring up the temperature, and I know I've just brought up the fan speed, and so that I get a little bit more air at the back here. So you will notice that it's actually quite bright right now, and that's because I have the entire rear sunroof open. And as I mentioned earlier, there's actually a front sunroof as well. So two sunroofs in the MIFA 9. And personally, I'm not such a huge fan of sunroofs, obviously because Singapore's rather hot and I don't see much use for it. But when you are ferrying passengers or your family in the back of the MIFA 9, I can imagine during a nighttime drive, kids will be very, very happy staring up at the night sky. I definitely know that if I put my 5-year-old in the back seat here, she's gonna love staring out the glass at night. So I think it's not a feature that kind of makes or breaks the vehicle, but it's definitely one that adds to the entire luxurious feel of the vehicle, which I think is very important in a luxury MPV. So, as I mentioned, there is a control panel up here. You can actually control certain other things as well. So for example, I can bring the blinds. Bring the blinds forward. Oh no, this is actually opening the sunroof itself. So you can see I'm actually able to open the entire sunroof, which is pretty cool. Yeah, sunlight. Okay, this is automatic, so I don't have to hold it actually. So that is very nice. And if I want to bring the sunshade forward, I can do that as well. Is this automatic? No, it's not automatic. So there you go. Once you bring forward the sunshade, whoa, actually this is a super nice place to be. It's so comfortable, it feels so shaded. There is really an executive feel about this. And not just that as well, I've just realized that the car actually comes with JBL speakers. So it's not just some OEM brand speakers, these are actually real legit ones. I had a try in them earlier, they do sound pretty good. In terms of controls, being the business end of the MPV, the rear seats, let me see. There is a button here that shows me that I have ventilated seats, but I am not entirely sure if this particular variant is equipped with the ventilated seats, or if it's another variant, maybe a higher end variant that has it. It feels like there's air coming out, so I'm gonna say that these ventilated seats work. Obviously there are heated seats as well, but we're never going to use them in Singapore. And of course you've got controls, electronic controls, not just digital ones. Sorry, not just manual ones, but you've got electronic controls for the seats, so you can move forwards and backwards. And more importantly, you can also recline like a boss. So excuse me while I enjoy myself a little bit. So this is what your life could be if you had a Maxus MIFA 9. And because it's an electric car, you can actually run the air conditioning and take a nap in the back and not worry about getting poisoned with carbon monoxide, because this is fully electric. So super good bonus. I can actually imagine bringing this car for, say, a camping trip even, say up to Malaysia. And you know, obviously Malaysia's camping conditions are not the most ideal because it's warm just like in Singapore. But with a car like that, you could actually kind of sleep in the car. You could recline the seats, I know, and spend the night inside the car while you run the air conditioning, and I think all that will all be pretty good. So yes, I think I've said enough about the MPV or about the interior. Obviously there's a third row that will fit full-size adults because it is a full-size 5.2 meter long MPV, so I'm not going to dwell too much into that. Last but not least, ISOFIX points. So you can actually carry, I see 3 sets of ISOFIX points, so you should be able to carry 3 sets of car seats in this vehicle, which is awesome. Better than the standard 2 that you find in most MPVs. And with that, let's go jump back into the driver's seat and take the car for a drive because we definitely want to see how this car behaves on the road. Okay, so now we are going to go for a drive in the Maxus MIFA 9, and to get some specs out of the way, this MIFA 9 has a battery pack of about 90 plus kilowatts or kilowatt hour battery. So that's a fairly sizable battery pack, and that will actually get you 200 over horsepower, 380 Newton meters of torque, and a supposed range of about 400-ish kilometers, which is actually pretty decent. I mean, considering that it comes from a fairly large battery pack, it's not entirely surprising, but nonetheless, it is still better than expected because, I mean, it is a fairly large vehicle, and I did kind of expect the range to be a little bit more crappy than this, but having it at 400 plus means that it is actually quite usable on a week-to-week basis and even for longer trips up to Malaysia. But what I kind of need to stress, and you know, keep in mind we haven't really actually had another MPV, fully electric MPV in the market, in Singapore's market before, so this is really kind of more of a hypothesis rather than a fact. But in a regular 4-seater or 5-seater electric vehicle, your maximum load is 5 people, right? And obviously we know that weight will definitely play a part in or will definitely affect range in some way or one way or another. So when a standard 5-seater says that it has a range of 400 kilometers, for example, and you consider that the max load is 5 people, there is a consideration that the range does decrease a little bit as you fit more people into the car. But in a MPV, and a full-size MPV, you've got 7 people as your maximum load, or maybe 6 if you consider that the captain style seats aren't really, or if you consider that the last row is actually really more meant for 2 people rather than 3. But anyway, you've got a maximum load of 6 instead of 4 or 5, which is definitely going to play an additional part in the range for this vehicle. So I think that's not something bad per se, but it is something to consider when you are looking at range of this vehicle. It's not as straightforward as if you were to, you know, base it off a standard vehicle. So that's in terms of range. I think that's something to consider. In terms of the way it drives, I actually quite like the way it drives. And I think the fact that this is fully electric brings about a completely new value proposition, or brings about an all new option to the market, because in the past we have been quite used to MPVs that are quite utilitarian to drive. And I mean, obviously, you know, you're never going to go chuck your MPV around the corner or do silly things in the MPV, but in the past, safe to say that the drivetrains have always been sort of, I mean, for lack of a better word, they were just really boring to drive, right? But with an electric MPV now, what you get in the MIFA 9 is actually a completely different level of power, smoothness, and driving dynamics, so to speak, that you never actually got from an MPV before. So if you kind of think about it, the fact that this is priced below $300,000 and you get a drivetrain that allows you some semblance of enjoyment, I think that's a really good value proposition. And it isn't soft and wobbly like other MPVs as well. It is actually set up to be quite firm in a way. It's not uncomfortable in any way, but it is on the firmer side of things, and that means that it doesn't waft about like most other Japanese MPVs do. In fact, I would say that aside from the Volkswagen Charan, which I think to date is still the MPV that drives the best, and perhaps maybe the Kia Carnival, which I think drove quite well too, I think this is right up there among the MPVs that kind of have very decent driving dynamics, and you don't feel completely like you're in a box on top of wheels. So I think that is a really, really positive note. I think the fact that it is electric also brings about the value proposition that is also going to be quite efficient to run, in a sense where obviously electric charge is cheaper than fuel. So even if you do have to recharge the car fairly often, because if you're carrying a full load, you drain your batteries, so on and so forth, I think it's still definitely going to be a lot cheaper than lugging a full-size petrol-powered MPV around. I think it's kind of nice to see as well, because truthfully, I think demand for MPVs around the world has sort of decreased a little bit. Of course, you know, as some of my viewers and some of you have pointed out, there are some countries like Taiwan, Hong Kong that still have a very strong MPV presence, but I think it's also a slightly different thing, because with those countries, the pool of cars that they get are slightly different. They don't, like Singapore and Hong Kong don't get the same car models as each other, so not really a comparison there as well. But specifically to Singapore, I think there are still a good amount of people who are interested to buy MPVs, but at the same time, people are also increasingly conscious about the fact that MPVs are large and basically quite inefficient on most days. But with an electric MPV now, a fully electric MPV, I think this is the car, or the MIFA 9 is the car that kind of takes the MPV format into the future and makes it relevant and kind of possible to sustain the idea of an MPV going forward. So I think that's a really nice step forward, and I do hope that more automakers follow in the footsteps of the MIFA 9 and start producing or start bringing to Singapore some of these electric MPVs, because I think there is a demand for cars like that. We are an Asian society after all, and Asian societies tend to be quite family oriented, which means that we like to carry like multi-generations in one car. So definitely having an MPV is a notion that we are quite familiar with, but having an electric MPV now gives us an excuse to continue driving what would normally, or would, you know, what would otherwise be seen as unsustainable. So that is my assessment of the MIFA 9. If you have any questions about the car that I didn't cover, or things that I missed out, please leave them in the comments below. I would be more than happy to answer them. And as usual, if you have enjoyed the video, or you have found this review useful in some way, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. That will be greatly appreciated, because we have new reviews coming out every single week, so it will be really, really great if you could join us for those reviews. Now, before we go, just a quick reminder, if you have a vehicle that you would like to sell, please check out the link in the description box below, because through that link, we will be able to provide you the highest possible quote and valuation for your used car. And if not, we can also help you to consign the car on the open market for an even better price. This is completely free to inquire. There are no transaction fees, no hidden fees. So if you're interested to sell your used car, please check out the link. And if not, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.